And good morning. This is Evelyn Grow. I'm your facilitator today, and we have an extremely interesting presentation coming up. Can't tell you, Jennifer Carson, PhD, how much we appreciate you being here with all your background and your heartfelt information that you're going to be sharing with us. Now, folks, if we really want your participation, so please, for those of you who just joined, I'll say it the second time, we want to hear from you. And it may need to be in the chat room because this is a very long presentation, a very meaty presentation. She laughs. And we want to get to all of it. But if there's a problem, with getting to certain chats, we'll try to pick them up at the end. Okay. All right. So here we go. Jennifer Carson, thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Evelyn. And thank you, Minerva, for being behind the scenes making this possible. And thank you so much to the WellMed Charitable Foundation for the invitation to come here today and to share the heart of care partnering, 10 values to ground and guide us by way of introduction, just so that you know where these values are coming from. They are coming from my mind. These are my reflections. I am a clinical associate professor and the founding director of the Dementia Engagement, Education, and Research Program, or the DEAR program for short, in the School of Public Health at the University of Nevada, Reno. My beautiful background, and yes, it really is this beautiful here. And come visit sometime. But just a little bit more about my background, because these values are not ivory tower academic reflections. It is true, I am a public health gerontologist. I'm also a participatory action researcher. So, all of my research is conducted in partnership with people living with dementia and care partners. I'm very committed to that value of authentic partnerships with people living with dementia. Perhaps it's because I come from the field of practice, unlike many of you. Prior to joining the faculty at UNR, I worked as a professional care partner across residential care and support. And so I've been a professional care partner to people living with dementia from the age of 15 and until now. I'm 53. I'll let you do the math, but that's 38 years of care partnering to support people who are living with dementia in a very direct capacity. And then I actually am also a former family care partner. My dad was diagnosed with vascular dementia and Lewy body dementia, and lived well with dementia for 8 years. And I'm going to share a little bit about my journey as a family care partner as well today. I am a fierce advocate, as Tony Chicatel could probably tell you, who I see is here. Hi to Tony. I'm a fierce advocate for dementia inclusion and for human rights-based relationship-centered dementia care. And I leverage education and research and community collaborations as resources for that change. But anecdotally, I'm also a barefoot musician. I have a band, and I'm a storyteller. And you'll see this presentation is a little bit different because I really embrace story and song, but to help build connection and spark innovation. So this is not a data heavy presentation, but know that it is well grounded in the science of dementia care and support as well. And finally, I am a believer in the radical power of presence, love, and hope. And so I'll be kind of riffing, if you will, this presentation today, really sharing from my heart and from the stock of my own life experiences in a way that I hope resonates with some of your experiences. And I love to hear about your experiences as well. So that's a little bit about me. A little more about that story, though. It is true, I've been a care partner for nearly 4 decades. And that's a picture of me. I actually started when I was 12. That was not my paid experience, but I've been supporting people living with dementia even longer, for over 4 decades, if you include my volunteer experience. My mom was a nurse in a nursing home. A lot of folks in the field get their start that way. They used to call my mom Doris Day of the dementia ward because she was just this ray of light in a rather dark space at the time. And back when I started at the age of 12, all nursing homes were total institutions. And so I had the benefit of learning from my mother's incredible example. And I've really, it's been an honor to support families through life's most vulnerable and precious moments, and it's been an honor to be a care partner. And in 2016, like I was sharing, my dad, who you see there pictured with me in the bottom right-hand corner, and my siblings, my dad was diagnosed in 2016. And I was really honored to support my dad through that journey until he passed this last December. But being a family care partner was a wonderful opportunity for me to really reflect on what I thought I knew about love and loss and what it really means to care. And it reminded me that care partnering is not about having all the answers. There are so many times where I didn't have an answer. And what I really discovered as a family care partner is that it really is just about showing up every day with humility, with that openness of learning from the person you're supporting with heart. And I think what's really important is that we show up with hope and optimism. And so, yes, it's true. Today I work in the halls of academia, but at my core, I am and will always be a care partner. And so, the values that I am here to share with you, I just want you to know they're not abstract. They are lived and they have sustained me through the hardest and most beautiful days of my life, really revealing the deep relationship between adversity and humanity that runs through the fabric of care, right? And care partnering is not just a set of tasks. Wouldn't it be great if it was that simple? Someone could just give us, the checklist what to do. But really, it's a relationship. This dynamic and evolving experience, and it asks us to bring our whole selves into a rather uncertain space. And so over time, while I sometimes use things like evidence-based practice protocols, I sometimes schedule routines, and you know what? Honest to God, I live by checklists. I love my checklists. But really, none of those things have sustained me as a care partner. What sustains me, I think, are a core set of values that I show up with every day, personally and professionally. And these values really guide us toward love. They guide us through uncertainty and they help us honor the dignity and the humanity of everyone involved in the circle of care. And so, what I'm going to share with you this morning are these 10 values, but this is how I want to do it a little more like a story. I want to share what I believe. Um, and I'm going to make some statements. I believe this, and I'll give you a little bit of context for why I believe that, so that you know that these aren't pie in the sky ideals, but like grounded in practices I've had over 4 decades. And because of those beliefs and these experiences, I therefore embrace a particular value in my practice as a care partner. So you'll see that there's a little pattern to my storytelling as we explore these 10 values together. So here's the first one. I believe, and I wonder if you do too, that words create worlds. Words create worlds, I believe, to a very great extent. Let me give you an example. You've probably heard me refer to myself as a care partner. It is a term I use to describe myself with tremendous intentionality. I used to call myself a caregiver earlier in my career. And trust me, folks, I'm not the word police, okay? But because I believe that words create worlds, I think that the way I see myself in my role is going to inform my actions. And my actions are going to shape a person's experience. A person who's living with dementia is going to help shape their experience. So, caregiver, from my perspective, and by the way, thanks to Hilarity for Charity for these great infographics, which I found on Facebook last week. They're awesome. And I love the way they articulate some of the nuanced differences between these terms that sometimes we just don't think about. The most common term in the US is caregiver. But for me, that word kind of implies a one-way relationship, right? There's care flowing in one direction. I'm a caregiver. But what opportunities does that term and that thinking open up for the person who's living with dementia? And so one of my core values is, relationships, reciprocity. I told you earlier, I'm committed to authentic partnerships. So when I call myself a care partner, it shapes my mindset. And that mindset is one of mutual respect and shared decision making. Care partnerships mean that I'm going to honor the voice of the person who's living with dementia as a contributor in this process, that we are in this together, and that they have something to offer to their own care and support, but also to the care and support of me, right? Of me. Some people call themselves caretakers, which is an interesting term that I kind of reserve for taking care of inanimate objects, right? Or dead bodies. Well, I guess that's an undertaker, technically. And in the UK and Australia, they were use words like carer because language is socially and culturally constructed. And I'm not here to tell you that there's a right or wrong choice. I'm just saying it warrants a little bit of thought. Okay, it depends on how you identify yourself, how the person that you are supporting feels, like what kind of interaction are they going for with you? What's the message that you want to send? But what I suggest is that you choose a word that reflects the care, the dignity, and the partnership that you bring to that role. Now, that's just thinking about how words create worlds when it comes to what I call myself, but also think about the way that words create worlds for people who are living with dementia. And I, didn't have a lot of space on this slide to put all the words that I actually hate. And I will use that word. I cringe. Again, I'm not the word police. I'm not going to correct someone and say, oh, you shouldn't say dementia patient when, unless you're in a clinical setting where they are a patient. But when you're supporting someone in their home, for crying out loud, they're a person, they're a homeowner, right? Suffering from dementia. I hear this all the time. People living with dementia have told me it's not the dementia that causes my suffering, folks. It's the social response to my dementia that creates most of the suffering. But if you look at this list of just highly stigmatized terms and you think about the mindset and the actions that are going to follow, and these are the words that we're using, I think that sets up excess suffering for people who are living with dementia. One of my pet peeves, I'm just going to share this with you, because, like I said, I've worked in residential settings for decades. And every time I hear someone say, oh, well, we allow our residents to go outside whenever they want to, there's a little it means like, what do you mean you allow them? Are who are you to allow another adult to do anything? Oh, we let them, we let them go outside. Oh, we let them eat. How about we support them in accessing the outdoors freely, right? We support them in having a say in when they eat. So there are words that are imbued with power, and I'm sensitive to those words, right? And so, and I reflect on this all the time. If I really want to change my language, I'll wear a rubber band, and every time I hear myself say something that I'm trying to not say, I'll snap it to remind myself, try to break that pattern because my value is respect. I choose respectful terms to emphasize equality, reciprocity, and respect, right? These words, the words we use, shape our mindset. And our mindset shapes our actions, and our actions shape what is possible, and to a great extent, shape the experience of living with dementia. And so, respect is a mindset that everyone deserves. Now, secondly, I believe our primary goal as care partners, and I don't care what your discipline is, I think this is for everyone, our primary goal should always be proactively supporting a person's well-being so they don't experience ill-being. But I also think as care partners, we have to proactively support our own well-being. What you see on the slide here is a framework that I developed using participatory action research with people living with dementia to understand how they describe living well with dementia. That's the beautiful swirl on the left. Think of these research findings as domains of well-being. Okay. Now think of each of these domains as a cup. How much well-being is in each one of those cups? Is that cup full to the brim and flowing over? That is awesome. Or is it dry as a bone? If somebody's cups are empty, they will be experiencing and communicating distress. Okay. When a family care partner's cups are empty, they will also be communicating and experiencing distress. When a professional care partner's cups are empty, how can they possibly fill the cups of a person living with dementia? Right? So, everyone's primary goal, I believe, within the context of dementia, is to keep your cups filled. As care partners, you cannot pour from an empty cup. I know because I've tried. I bet you've tried too, and it doesn't work. You just can't show up present. You can't show up with positivity. You can't show up with patience and empathy when your cups are bone dry. So, self-care is not selfish, it's essential. So one of the resources I've provided is a worksheet that I use in a training that I teach. This training is a 12-hour long training, not a 1 hour training like this, but I wanted you to have this resource because as a family care partner, I found it tremendously helpful both in assessing the well-being of people living with dementia, whom I support, but also in assessing and reflecting on my own well-being. I use the same worksheet. I go through and I draw a line to indicate the amount of well-being in each one of my cups of well-being. And where I see I have a cup that is really low or bone dry, I know that's a warning. I need to do something to fill that cup, otherwise I will experience ill-being. Similarly, if my dad has some empty cups, he will be experiencing ill-being. And when people experiencing ill-being, they will communicate that, right? They will communicate that distress. Now, it's really important that I teach when I use this very basic assessment. I'll call it an assessment. And it's so accessible for to do in partnership with people living with dementia. Is that just remember the best practice is to engage the person living with dementia in this assessment process to the fullest extent possible. And I have done this with people who have lost the ability to verbally communicate, but can very clearly show me where they would draw the line. Okay. So, to the fullest extent possible, avoid making assumptions and trust that each person is the expert of their own experience. Family care partners, according to research, are horrible proxies, by the way, for understanding what their loved ones really want and prefer, which is good to know. Okay, so value number two, self-care. And as a family care partner, and professional, I encourage you to schedule it. Because if you just think that you're going to fit it in when you have time, it won't happen. But I'm telling you, it's essential. So, like, get it on the schedule. Self-care is giving the world the best of you instead of what is left of you. Okay. All right. So, the next belief, I believe in building a care team. Find yourself some partners. This is not for lone rangers. This dementia care and support requires a team approach. So find some partners. Back in 2025, I read this incredible book. I still really highly recommend it by Christine Bryden, a person living with dementia, a person who's still living with dementia. She wrote this book in 2025, but back in the pandemic, I bought her book about her 20 years of dementia self-advocacy. It's an awesome book. But fortunately, I was the beneficiary of knowledge from a person living with dementia who said back in 2005, we need care partnerships. And this is a quote from Christine, move away from labeling ourselves caregiver and sufferer toward becoming a care partnership in which we accept, collaborate, and adapt to new roles within the journey of dementia. And in this care partnership, the person with dementia is at the center of the relationship, but not alone as an object to be looked at, not merely as a care recipient. Instead, we become an active partner in the circle of care. So when we're talking about building a care team, the most important person of that team is the person who is living with dementia. And I applied this value to my life. This is the primary care team. This is me, my brother David, and my dad, Ray Arand. And my brother and I and my dad worked in partnership to make every single decision together. We are committed to working as a team. And my brother, who was the primary care partner, because my our dad lived with him, would let me know when it was time for him to take a break and for me to step in. And because of my role, I was like, yeah, we need a team that's a little bigger than just the three of us. And I said, Dad, I'm going to encourage you to engage community-based supports and services really early here. I don't need any support in the house, my dad would say. And I'd say, Dad, if not for you, for me, please, just for my peace of mind, I'm asking you to do this as a favor to me. But let me tell you, Dad, what happens if you don't engage community-based supports and services early? You don't have good options. So if you want the best of what is available in terms of community-based or home-based supports and services, or even residential support and services, begin the journey early. Well, my dad is one of like the five people in this world who have ever followed my advice for being proactive. So, but maybe someone here will too. My dad said, "All right, okay, let's start with home care. All right." And he's like, "I don't need anybody to help me get dressed, but if somebody wants to like take me shopping, maybe fix some of my meals and hang out with me, that would be cool." We're like, "Great." So, Dad, we're going to interview them together because we're a team. Absolutely, he said. I'm going to pick my own care partner. And my dad picked Kara. And we were so, I mean, he got to interview and select his own care partner. And Kara is family. We love Kara. Kara was there even as my dad was actively dying. In fact, she's standing in this photo at the place where we scattered my dad's ashes. Um, Kara was a godsend, and she became part of that care team. Okay, and a dear friend. This is what happens when families work proactively and work early. You get to interview and pick your own care partners, and we got Kara, and she was my dad's care partner for 6 years of beautiful relationships. So, collaboration, we are not meant to do this alone. And we don't have to. There's a lot of supports available. We just have to, find out what they are, and then try to access them a bit early would be my recommendation. All right, next belief. I believe care partnering is complex. I'm sure that you all agree it is, pretty complex. And now it may not be this complex. Okay, it's not like this, right? It is, it's not rocket science. Some days it feels like it could be a bit like rocket science, but it's complex. And that is because every person's different. What works one day may not work the next day. There's no, there are people are individuals, right? Individuals are unique. And so individuals living with dementia are unique and living with changing cognition. This is a very complex situation. Okay, there's no recipe for success. If you ever come to me asking me for, my evidence-based practice protocol on how to be an effective care partner, I can't give it to you. And because it's so complex, right? There's so much nuance, so much complexity. But here's what I do tell people: just embrace the complexity, understand it's complex. And what we do know scientifically is that the best resources that we have available to deal with complex situations are strong relationships and effective communication. That's it. Strong relationships and effective communication are the best available resources for dealing with the complexity of dementia care and support. My family um, dealt with this complexity through family meetings. I mean, I grew up in family meetings. I don't know if any of you did, but like whenever something important needed to, we need to make an important decision. Maybe we're going to move somewhere, or, somebody talk about sharing a car, or whatever we had to talk about. My family would sit at the kitchen table and we'd like talk about it, and we'd have a family meeting. So I was really fortunate that my family had that model and experience that we could bring into the context of my dad's support. And we sat at the kitchen table and we made plans together with my dad, and we communicated. Now, sometimes, honestly, my dad may not have always remembered some of that planning, right? And sometimes he'd get upset. He'd say, "You kids are making decisions without me," when we absolutely included him in the decision, like the decision to sell his truck. I happen to recall that that was a tense situation because he didn't remember that we had a family meeting about it and that he decided to sell his truck. So when it was sold, he was upset. Now, in that situation, folks, you have two choices. You could either be right or you could be kind. And I always suggest just being kind. I didn't need to tell my dad, no, dad, we were right there. We all sat at the table together and made this decision together. You were right there and you said that we could sell your truck. That's me being right. Me being kind is saying, Dad, I'm so sorry that you feel excluded from these important decisions. Um, that must be really difficult. And please let me know what David and I can do to ensure that you feel included, because I don't want you to feel that way. That's kind. That's kind, right? Kindness wins always. Okay. No good having an argument with somebody living with dementia about the facts of a situation. Also, when we're talking about communication, we have to talk about, remember, people living with dementia often are living with aphasia. And so we have to like really think through how are we going to support their communicative needs in order to participate in something like the family meeting. And so as my dad's dementia progressed, we would ask questions like, what will help support dad's participation in this discussion? Sometimes it was a written resource, very simple. Sometimes it was, um, you know, oh gosh, different things. Make sure that we're sharing information in pieces that he could actually, think about. Not don't overwhelm him with information. I mean, it's also important as care partners that we take into account both types of aphasia. We're really good at remembering that people have expressive aphasia because we can hear it. We kind of suck at remembering that people have receptive aphasia, meaning that they're not always understanding the words coming out of your mouth. And oftentimes we get the socially appropriate head nods. What doesn't mean that that person's actually understood what you have said. So it's really important that we understand that we're dealing with receptive and expressive aphasia and to think about communication aids to help us with both. I use a lot of nonverbal communication in that effort. I love this. This is old research from this is as old as me. Morabian's 73855 rule of personal communication. And this was a researcher from UCLA who said, you know what, in personal communication, only 7% of that communication are the words actually coming out of your mouth. Okay, so think about the fact that a person's living with aphasia and the words that we're using may or may not be making much sense. But in personal communication, 38% is your voice tone, right? The rate of your speech. 55% is your body language. That's a lot, right? And so remember that nonverbal communication is a powerful tool to support us in communication. Why use words alone, right? You're just not going to get your message across. It'd be like me teaching this entire webinar with my camera off. It wouldn't be nearly as fun or as helpful. But here's this rule is context specific. All right, so these percentages, good to know professional care partners, These percentages mainly relate to situations in which we're forming an attitude about another person. And remember that people living with dementia may not remember you day to day. So every day they're forming a new attitude about whether or not you're someone they're going to like or someone who they do not like. So the words can still be the most important part of the message, especially if you're using those highly stigmatized terms that make people cringe. But body language and tone of voice are mainly what people use to assess whether or not we like a person, whether or not we trust a person who's delivering a message. And right now, you're all using it to decide whether or not you're gonna, trust anything I'm sharing. So I hope you do. I hope you can tell it's coming from a place of sincerity. So
Jennifer,
yeah.
Jennifer, please excuse me for interrupting. You
Oh,
have about 15 minutes left and you have more than half of your values. So I just wanted people to know if we don't get through the whole presentation, that you are going to share your slides with them and you're going to share a handout that has the 10
oh,
values in it and that they're explained on that handout.
oh, sorry, Evelyn. I did think I had 20 minutes left, but that's if you want me to end at a quarter till I shall.
Well, we have till 10 too, but
Okay, yeah.
knock it out.
Knock Next value. But the value is communication. Communicate often and together. Learn to speak with more than your words and to listen with more than your ears. I believe in possibility. That's my next belief, right? Like the possibility you can live well with dementia. If you don't believe that you can live well with dementia, probably not going to open up many opportunities for a person to experience that possibility. And so I try my best to focus on possibilities and to focus on strengths rather than limitations and deficits. I understand a person's limitations and deficits, but I choose to focus on possibilities and strengths. And what I want to tell you is that even risk has an upside, right? And some of the greatest gifts come from embracing risk within the context of dementia. And so I look for and I celebrate what remains: strengths, joy, love, fun, simple pleasures, moments of deep meaning in life. And I try to not focus on the downside of risk. In other words, the chance that something bad might happen if my dad takes a walk around the block by himself with his dog, without also focusing on the upside of risk and the possibility that something really wonderful might occur. Okay, so possibility, possibility. I believe people living with dementia have rights. They have rights. Every human has rights. And what I also believe is that the rights of people living with dementia are being stripped away from them every day by people with the best of intentions who honestly just don't know that people living with dementia have rights. I'm going to give you one example only. Under the ADA and the Supreme Court Olmstead decision, a dementia-related diagnosis, even when accompanied by a durable power of attorney, does not justify placement in a locked and segregated memory care setting. This could be shocking for many people. It was to me. I'm a former memory care operator, and I can tell you I didn't know this. From a legal perspective, each step in the assessment continuum must be clearly understood and thoughtfully applied to avoid placing individuals in overly restrictive environments without justification. Moreover, in the absence of appropriate legal authority, such as a court order, like guardianship, or valid informed consent from the person themselves, placement in a locked setting may constitute unlawful confinement or false imprisonment, potentially exposing providers to significant liability, six-figure fines, and violating the rights of people living with dementia. This is just one example. And so, what I encourage people to do is to get familiar with the rights, all human rights, and to think about ways that people living with dementia have rights and to retain those rights. One of the frameworks I've used, which I've given to you as a supplement as a part of this presentation, is one that I took from the literature by Bouchard and Kinderman. It's called The Frida Principles of Human Rights in Dementia Practice. My family and I used this framework to reflect on our dad's rights regularly. I'm not going to read all of these statements for you, but what I love is that they took the Frida rights and created a set of reflective statements to help care partners in partnership with the person living with dementia reflect on how well their human rights are being supported and upheld in these different domains. Autonomy. Let's just look at those statements. Give me the freedom to do what I want, which may include taking risks. Help me make decisions for myself. Give me advice, but don't try to control me. My value is autonomy. I believe and I foster inclusion. I am firmly committed to the belief of nothing about us without us, right? Nothing about us without us. Family care partners often think they're the best source of information when it comes to decision making, and they can be very helpful, but I believe it's usually best to go straight to the source, to the person themselves, to gauge their perspectives, their preferences, and their choices to the greatest extent possible. And as a family care partner or professional, you might be really surprised by what you learn. A resource that I'm giving as part of this presentation is a flyer that, well, if you follow this QR code, it'll take you there as well. A resource that we recently developed in partnership with the True Experts, People Living with Dementia. It is a free downloadable dementia self-management guidebook, and it shows you what happens when you partner with the True Experts. This is a free resource. It's an accessible resource, so it works with screen readers, etc. It's on the DEAR program website. But because of my value of inclusion, the DEAR program also serves as the administrative home for the Dementia Friendly Nevada effort. We are proud to serve in that capacity, supporting communities across our state in becoming more dementia inclusive. You know, partnering with people living with dementia and honoring each person's lived experience opens a world of possibilities for living well, and it actually is what supports optimal dementia care. I also believe that a dementia inclusive community is a strong community. Everyone needs community, and communities need everyone. All right, big belief here, key concept, I'd say for care partners. I believe that most so called dementia related behaviors are actually expressions of distress. And, there is dementia pathology. I'm not disputing that, but it's kind of like pouring gasoline on a fire. If a person is in distress, they have difficulty expressing or explaining that distress. So it's going to come out, but care partners have a tendency to label these expressions of distress as behaviors, and they just blame the dementia. When we blame the dementia, we reach for pills or approaches that don't work because we're not addressing the underlying causes of distress. And what this list shows us is there are many common causes of distress. And so when I see a person who's in distress, I don't redirect a person because if you're redirecting a person, you're not trying to explore and understand the underlying cause of distress. You're blaming the dementia or something. You're like, oh, they don't, I'm just gonna, oh, come over here, let's have some tea and cookies. And so what you're really doing is you're trying to distract a person to get them to do what you want them to do instead of exploring what is important to them. And so, what I try to do is recognize that all behavior is meaningful communication, and I try to explore it with the intent to understand what's really going on so that hopefully I could be more proactive in the future. So, the eighth value is exploration, right? Empathic curiosity. Explore what might possibly be going on and stop blaming the dementia. Now, my dad's hallucinations, those were absolutely triggered by the pathology of Lewy body, right? But if my dad's feeling pretty anxious about something, it might not be the Lewy body. Okay. Next, I believe that love is the most basic human need. Love, defined broadly, means that connection, belonging, being seen and valued. And without love, even survival loses its meaning. And for professional care partners, this is, interesting territory because you were probably taught, like I was taught, that I must maintain professional boundaries. In fact, I was told by one of my professors, Jennifer, you're going to be a wonderful care partner, caregiver, actually, is what he said. You're going to be a wonderful caregiver if you could just remember one thing, and that is that the residents are not your friends.
Oh,
How many of you were taught the same thing? In other words, don't form an actual relationship with the people you support. Well, I went into the field of practice and could tell you having boundaries that prevented me from having genuine relationships with people living with dementia prevented me from providing good dementia care. I mean, so that's why I favor relationship centered, person directed, relationship centered approaches to dementia care. But my friend Phyllis Fair, pictured here, she's a tremendous dementia self advocate living with dementia in Ontario, Canada. And she has another kind of love that she taught me about that I get to share with you. She said, in addition to love, what people living with dementia really need is love, LUVE, listening, understanding, validation, and empowerment. So now I try to work from a place of love, but also love, empowerment, right? Supporting people living with dementia with love. In fact, AARP National funded me and my friends, the variety, a very interdisciplinary cast of characters here. Some of you might recognize Dr. Bill Thomas, kind of a very incredible innovator in the field. He's a geriatrician. AARP funded us to go on a 52 city tour to help disrupt dementia. And what was our number one message? Love, love. These are human beings, human beings. So how do we bring the love? And then lastly, see, Evelyn, your little tip to go faster was so helpful. I'm good. It's like, woo, we'll have time for Q&A or like uh, resonance, places of conflict, whatever y'all want to talk about. But like, lastly, what I believe is that care partnering is an opportunity to reflect and to learn and to grow. It sure has made me a better human being, I believe. I know that it has. Um, Adversity is such a great teacher, right? Adversity. I know that care partnering work is often invisible and it's undervalued in our society. But I do think it is sacred work. And I believe that it is like one of the greatest pathways toward personal development. I think that being a care partner has helped me deepen my own humanity in a world often devoid of humanity. And it is an honor to be a care partner in the context of dementia, where I get to learn every day what it means to be a good person, to be a good person. And so, with that, what I'd like to say, especially to my dad, is thank you for helping me grow. And he did that um, even as he was dying. I remember my dad telling me, first, thank you, expressions of gratitude. Um, and then he told me, Jenny, I'm not afraid to die. And he showed me what a good death looked like. And he really helped me grow. And so, thank you to my dad. And thank you to all of the people living with dementia who I have had the honor to support in this mortal life, who have helped me to become a better version of myself I think I could ever imagine being if I didn't have all of these incredible teachers to guide me through. And so those are my 10 care partner values. I think there's probably more, but that's all I have time for. And it's a great opportunity to just reflect on what has helped me navigate the last 4 decades of supporting people in such complex situations. And I want to honor each of you for being in that same space and for the contributions that you make every single day to the lives of others. And I hope that your journey, like mine, is one of incredible human development, and that you have the opportunity to see the best of humanity through your roles. And so we do have time, only thanks to Evelyn for keeping me moving along. We do have time for questions, comments, ideas. I know some of the stuff I offered may have been a little like, oh, I didn't know that, or kind of controversial. And so this is a great space for us to talk about it. And it's a judgment-free zone. And I don't believe that I'm right about everything. These are
Okay.
just my heartfelt reflections.
Jennifer, we have two comments that have been up for a while. I just want to tell you about those. JF said typically long-term care facility staff believe and sadly act as if they are the gatekeepers. And he said it right after you were talking about we allow them to go outside.
Yeah. Yeah, I would encourage, I would like here, it's a great residential setting challenge is to just sensitize people to those two words for 1 month and say, hey, this month, let's really think about the words let and allow and be mindful of how often we use it and teach them about power dynamics and what it suggests when we say we allow our residents to go outside. We let them eat whenever they do. And then even the term our residents, I let my, sometimes people use the word my residents. And again, I'm not trying to be the word police here. I'm just saying that these people don't belong to you. They are not your possessions. They're like they're adults. They are autonomous adults. They're and worthy of being treated as adults. And they're not like our pets. Like so I'm sensitive and I'm not saying that I even do it perfectly. I'm just super mindful. I might say something like, we really support residents without having a possessive term there. We really support residents in having a say in when they eat and where they go, right? Same thing with feeding. Um, I hate, oh, I'm gonna feed this person if you could feed. How about I'm gonna support this person in eating their lunch. Toileting, I'm gonna go toilet Joe. How about I'm gonna go support Joe in using I'm gonna go assist Joe. These words again are shaping our actions, and these actions are shaping the experience of living with dementia.
We have a question I think that probably is on a lot of people's minds, including mine. I've taken care of people with dementia all my life. It's been one of my jobs, and three of my family members have died, one with dementia. And this question is, what would you recommend instead of deflecting and distraction?
Oh,
Because it's
yeah,
that whole thing, it's the
redirection.
whole thing about making a good decision about when you feel like their communication is accurate or inaccurate.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that the person might be talking about deflection and distraction the way that I was talking about redirection, which unfortunately is an approach that professional care partners are actually taught to do, right?
We're still teaching.
Still teaching it. And I can tell you after 40 years of practice, I can't tell you that I never use it. I can tell you with 100% honesty, it is never my first approach. My first approach is more validating. It's that empathic curiosity. It's saying, wow, something's going on for this person. Maybe they're in some distress, and I would like to understand what's happening. And so if I invite you just to sit down, have a cup of tea, and look at a box of trinkets with me, that's like a band-aid on a train wreck because you're never gonna understand what the unmet need is if you don't engage in some empathic curiosity. So an approach that I was taught, fortunately, way back in the 90s, and I still use quite a bit today, is validation. Asking non-judgmental, supportive questions that help me explore that person's sense of reality and trying to identify what the unmet need is and then try my very best to meet the need and I have found that that approach it helps me correct the source of distress much more often than just simply redirecting or distracting a person. That's not going to help you ever get to the source of the cause of distress.
Can you give us an example of validation?
Sure. Okay, so I want to go home. I want to go home, somebody might say, pushing on the to get out of memory care. Remember, I'm a former memory care operator myself. So just saying, oh, Joe, let's go sit down and look and have I baked your favorite cookies. Let's go have chocolate chip cookies and milk. I know you love those. Okay, well, maybe Joe goes with me, but I haven't figured out where he was trying to go, what he was trying to do. So empathic curiosity would be, hey, Joe, where are you heading? Well, I'm heading home. Oh, where's your home? Bellingham, Washington. Oh, Bellingham. What a beautiful place. I love Bellingham. When's the last time that you were in Bellingham, Joe? Oh, well, let's see. And so Joe and I are engaging in a conversation and I might ask him questions like, well, who's that? Who do you live with? Who's at your house? If he's looking for his family. And what I'm trying to do is understand what's going on. And in asking those types of questions, what I have learned, sometimes people are just looking, they really are looking for their family. And it's an opportunity, and I don't engage in lying to people. I don't do that. And I'm not also gonna just be like hit people with exactly what's going on. But I might say, your family knows you're here, Joe, and we actually have a space that is just yours. Can I go show it to you? Or I have found that some people are leaving because they don't have any money, cash, and other people are gathering to eat a meal. And this person feels like I'm damn hungry, but I got no money. But that looks like a restaurant, right? So they're only trying to leave because they don't have any money and they think they're going to have to pay for a meal. And they're like, I don't have the money to pay. And I say, oh, you know what? It is already paid for. You guys are so good at paying those bills up. You don't have to pay anything for this lunch. You paid for it in advance. So I don't know what the situation is, why a person's trying to leave unless I actually engage in that empathic curiosity, trying to understand what's going on in this person's reality, and then trying to validate and support them, and empowering them, just like Phyllis Fair was saying. So I can't say it always works, and I have, in all honesty, I've had people say things to me like, "Look, I want the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, and no going around the block to get it." And what they're saying is, stop peppering me with all of your validating questions and just give me the facts. And then I'm like, okay. And I've had people do that to me, like when they're asking me, I want to know if my spouse is dead. And I'm using validation. Tell me about your spouse. When was the last time you saw your spell? Oh, well, it sounds like you had such a great marriage. I'd love to hear more about. And I'd ask supportive questions. And I have had people say, don't give me your, trick of the trade here, woman. I'm just asking you for a point blank answer. Is he dead? And in those moments, I have found that answering the question and then being available for a person to emotionally process the information is feels like the kindest thing to do. Yeah, Laverne, I think Jerry did pass away about 5 years ago. But I want you to know I am here with you. And I know that must be so hard. And I'm not gonna leave you. I'm here with you. Let's talk about how you feel. Let's talk about it. I know what it's like to lose someone, Laverne.
It's a great response. We have one more thing I think you might like to respond to, and the rest are thank yous, and we're going to email the slides, yes. But Steve asks, where does my sense of responsibility fit in?
And who's Steve? I'm
He's one of our participants.
I need to know more
That would
about.
be me.
Oh, sorry, Steve.
What would you like to know?
Well, in what context, I guess, are you asking what's your,
As my wife continues to progress through her dementia, I am responsible for her, for all that happens to her,
yeah,
and how well she can go through this the most painless way possible.
yeah,
I am responsible.
yeah,
A lot of what you said seemed to me to be, I don't mean to be offensive or anything, but it seemed a little, I don't know, just a little light in terms of the real world, how ugly this can become.
Yeah, I think Steve, and I can appreciate people often do think that my approach is a bit light, which is why I try helping people know it's based on 40 years of practice. And the one of the things I shared that I really encourage people to do is to build that care team so that it is never one person's sole responsibility, because that's really hard. I can't imagine going through it alone and being the only person solely responsible. And that's where I think engaging with community-based supports and services or coming to things like this are really helpful, where you can continue to pick up on resources that can help you navigate decision points. The other thing that's really helpful that I've found helpful in my work professionally and personally is to engage the person living with dementia to the greatest extent possible and knowing what their preferences and wishes are. Because then it kind of does take a little bit of that burden off of my shoulders to think that I'm the one who has to come up with what's the right thing to do. And there were times when my dad and I did not necessarily agree on what the right approach would be, and we would navigate those decisions together. And so I guess what I'm saying is I never felt like my dad's support was solely my responsibility, and that must be a really heavy weight to carry, a very heavy weight to carry. And maybe my approach felt a little bit lighter because I surrounded myself with support.
Thank you for
Thank you.
that. Yes. And thank you for your question, Steve. It's a good one.
Oh, and one other thing, Steve, I'm so glad you're here. There's this thing I've experienced where a lot of family care partners suddenly become a family care partner, but they don't receive educational resources to help them know how to do it. And so I think training for family care partners, comprehensive training on par with professional training, is essential. We don't just wake up one day knowing how to be a care partner to a person living with dementia. We need training. I was fortunate that I had, a good 35 years of practice before my dad developed dementia, and I could draw on that to support him. It must be really difficult for people who are outside of the field of dementia care, who suddenly have a loved one diagnosed with dementia, but have not received the resources that they need to know kind of how to navigate life with dementia. So that dementia self-management guidebook that I shared, it was written for people who've recently been diagnosed with dementia, but what I've also heard is that family care partners have found that resource invaluable. It's a pretty comprehensive written resource to help family care partners get the support they need. And I really appreciate you being here, Stephen, for sharing from your heart.
Absolutely. And I'm sorry, I need to bring this to a close. Um, for those of you who are still on with us, I want you to know that if you are not registered for this program, that you will not get the slides and all of the wonderful handouts that Jennifer has prepared. So please call Minerva at 866-390-6491. That's 866-390-6491 and get registered. And then you will not only get the resources from this presentation, you will also get a monthly calendar so you can sign up for the upcoming resources. We thank you for filling out the session questionnaire. I want to thank our presenters so much. Very interesting, very, very interesting. And a little, I think it sure made me think a bit because yeah, we were taught different stuff in school. I'm much older than you, but it's a whole new world, and it's much more about, like you mentioned, it's nothing about us without us. So with that, I want to thank everyone, especially the WellMed Charitable Foundation and all of you caregivers for what you do every day. And thank you for being here today. We really appreciated your input. I'm going to make our podcast so much better. And with that, I am going to leave the meeting here. You'll hear this little, okay, there we go. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much.